Näst på tur här idag har vi iTech, ett spännande bolag med en unik ingrediens inom den marina världen. Och vi presenterar Chaabane som nästa talare, vd på iTech. Välkommen!
I will switch to English as I have learned there are international audience on the call today. Otherwise, we're a Swedish company. I'm Swedish. We're located in Gothenburg on the west coast with a very strong marine heritage. And that leads us on to the topic of an incredible marine ingredient technology for anti-fouling coatings, meaning coatings going on a ship underwater lines. Let me shift slides here. We are not only located in Gothenburg, but also at AstraZeneca BioVenture Hub, together with a bunch of other quite cool entrepreneurial companies. We are clearly distinguished from others as we are not involved in the pharma industry at all, but we use pharma technology to actually find the solution to combat barnacle growth on any structure, but most importantly on ships and vessels. So with our technology, we create a big difference on the smoothness of the hull over a long period of time. The company is listed at Nasdaq Stock Exchange Market as of 2018. It's a compact team, which is the beauty of the case. It has a limited number of customers out there. About 6 of them comprises more than 80-85% of the global market. We outsource production, so the case here is to build in the ingredient technology, run it very lean, and have very high margins and EBITDAs moving forward. The company is then surrounded by a strong IPR, and in contrast to many other industries, it's not only patents, but it's also regulatory files on the key markets, which are probably stronger than patents in this industry. It's a more and more mature company. It is selling. Its product is integrated in more than 10 anti-fouling products for commercial big ships. It's used on many different ship types, and our current customer base accounts for 60% of the global market within commercial shipping, I should say. This presentation will not contain that much numbers, so the only few I will give right now is growth of the first 9 months, which has been strong, 34%. We reported in quarter 3, the 6th consecutive quarter with positive EBITDAs, strong cash balance and cash flows. So we're prepared for taking next steps, and if needed, also to support tougher times if needed, depending on the pandemic that we're all affected from in some way. The market potential is big, meaning that if Selektope was integrated in every single liter of anti-fouling sold, it would be a business of $350 to $500 million per year. And anti-fouling is something you have to use on everything that is used in oceans. Obviously, the most interesting area is global big ships. The other area is workboats with significantly lower water surface, of course, or wet surface, as we say. And then there are these untapped areas that we're still looking at, which is on the leisure boat segment, and we include in that mega yachts, although mega yachts could easily belong to the same product category as the 2 ones to the left. The smaller boats, however, have a different regulatory scheme and a much more complex market and regulatory approval process from a paint perspective. Selektope is, however, approved for all these segments, but it requires also a paint system approval, which currently is quite complex in Europe, but potentials could arise outside Europe. So we are mainly making our business on the 54,000 big vessels, where we are having a very good position in new building and dry dock. And as you can see, it's a very recurring business. They have to dry dock. We have 10 to 15,000 dry docks every year, about 1,000 to 1,500 new builds per year, at least a normal year. And that is the beauty of the game. It is forced to be recoated normally every 5 years. Same goes for the middle segment, but it's a different type of selling argument, as the fuel is not as important as it is on the far left side. All our product is sold on export. Asia is the biggest market, of course, and the current focus again is the big ships. So what are we doing? Well, our molecule is integrated. You see the molecule in the center of the picture is integrated then in an antifouling coating to combat barnacle settlement. And I think we're the only ones in the world who actually knows the physiology of a barnacle. And then we have a very unique way of stimulating, triggering, if you wish, a swimming behavior. We call it a triggering flight mode. So it leaves the surface. It doesn't kill the target organism. It just leaves the surface through exerting its swimming behavior, settling then on another ship, competing ship, another structure, or anywhere else. And the effect of this is very, very strong. There's a powerful performance introduced in the paints, as you can see here on the right-hand side. We have a test patch containing Selektope, which then has survived a very extraordinary test on this ship, comparing them to a normal anti-fouling product. So this ship has been laying idling. That, when you don't move, that's when you have the problems at anchor, and it's been idling a lot in barnacle paradise area, as we call it, which in this case is Tokyo Bay. The picture is then taken in Japan by a Japanese paint maker who's leading user of the technology. So the product name to put on mind is Selektope. I'll come back to have that branded into the products later. And later, I mean already on this slide, actually. So there are three big makers, as mentioned, about 60% of the market. Jotun, number 1 in the world. Chugoku, number 2. Hempel, number 4, but strongly moving upwards. Chugoku is the biggest user. They issue a stronger guarantee when using the Selektope product. Guarantee against idling, against marine growth during idling, I should say. Jotun is on the same pathway, pushing it a little bit further with his 50 days idling period against barnacles, maybe not as a guarantee, but as a selling argument. And this is what it's all about. Having Selektope inside gives a tremendous power and a new level of abilities to resist marine fouling. The problem of marine fouling is growing, and it's also being very much in line with the global trends. The fouling increases with global water temperature increases, as an example. The fouling problem also increases with more static exposures, such as has happened during the COVID situation, has happened during different other geopolitical issues, and therefore it's a big problem. But the consequences of fouling, if you get it, is that you have a tremendous effect on emissions because you use more fuel, and shipping is already a big contributor of marine emissions of greenhouse gases. 2.3 to 2.6% of all global emissions are from shipping, and a substantial part also if you just encounter the transport sector, which is a diagram to the far left. Together, it's for shipping done about 1 million tons of CO2 emitted every year. So it's a huge potential here that needs to be reduced to 2050 by a figure of 50%. The other area of concern right now is the spread of invasive species. We also have a scenario where we could use this smart material of ours to replace the abnormal use of metal oxides. So trying to walk through this quickly, if you have barnacle fouling, you have a considerable risk of using excessive fuel of up to 80%. Normally, that's a very extreme case, but say 40 to 80% is not too unusual when you have only 10 to 15% of your surface covered by barnacles. And you can see to your right how much fuel is used on ships, and knowing that the fuel price is about $300 per ton at the lowest end, it gives some really interesting potentials. We have seen this picture, and this is how you save the money then, right? Keeping hulls clean actually saves you a lot of money and a lot of fuel. Comparing that a few different vessels, we have seen that MR tankers with 3 different coatings yield actually 10% improvement for the Selektope coating compared to other premium technologies. In their case, it amounts to around $1,200 per day in saving, and this is then not a super big ship, right? So that's a considerable contribution from our technology, and then this ship has obviously been idling quite a lot, and thereby we're very proud to see that the ship has remained clean over so long time. It is now actually a 5-year docking coming up, and it still looks very good. Invasive species is another area of problem. They are related to the hull and to the ballast water, but here we only focus on the hull. So hull-borne alien species are actually identified to be 60 in terms of number. That means species that have moved from one ecosystem to another. The cost only for UK, which is just exemplified, is about 45 million euros per year in terms of issues, damages to waterlogged systems, to the ecosystems in general. So it's a big problem that is now clearly related to the hull. So a fouled hull has a big risk of bringing invasive species to other markets, to other geographical regions. And ships may not enter harbors anymore in certain areas if they cannot prove clean hulls. And that is all for this one reason. So at a test that one of the customers made, they tested a very optimized niche product on a sea chest, which is in a niche area, an area where it's normally very difficult to control fouling. And you see the difference on these two pictures, and it's actually a 16-month inspection period on the right-hand side. And this is what needs to look like to actually make a difference and providing the ship owner with a relief in sense of having the ability to get a positive acceptance of its port calls to areas such as Australia, New Zealand, California, who are the most stringent in this area. Finally, but not the least, we replace a lot of metal oxides in marine coating, or at least the potential is there to replace a lot. So if Selektope is used at gram level, like less than 2 per liter of paint to provide this performance you have been seeing, other alternatives relying on metal oxides use significantly more, around 700-800 grams per liter paint to have the same performance on barnacles. So although we cannot replace the one by the other, if you want to compare apples by apples, you can at least reduce metal oxides considerably. Hence, less is more in its true terms when it comes to Selektope. So it's a clear solution to the most trending sustainability issues for shipping. On top of that, it saves a lot of fuel in an industry representing 80% of global trade, and that is also very much affected by the changes in global economy and the heating of global oceans, making the fouling pressure even higher. So I would say we're right in the spot of the key trends for this industry, and with 3 big customers backing the technology, we are in a good position to move forward. I want to thank you with that and look forward to questions.
Thank you, Philip, for your presentation. Very interesting there. Can you start a bit off by just talking about the market climate right now, and what's the current status on the outfitting market versus the dry docking?
The market situation right now is hampered a bit by the tough commercial situation in transport sector, where we have had some clear indications in Q2 that less, the GDPs in the world went down, meaning less goods is being freighted, and a lot of ships has been laid off, so to say. They are now coming back, and there are some signs or quite clear signs that the industry is getting back into some sort of a normal mode. But the cautiousness is still there, meaning nobody's really sure where on the time frame in which one could invest. So people tend to play short. The other part of your question is dry dock versus new build, and I would say it's about 50-50 for I-Tech. Dry docking is the major part of the opportunity, of course, and the area where we will grow. New building is having a tough time, but I should say the ships that are being built are very likely to be a Selektope customer, if you wish, for the simple reasons that the outfitting period has turned out to be very challenging. And to deliver a ship with fouling is just not acceptable anymore. So I think Selektope will actually have a continuous nice growth, although a weak market. So that's how we see it.
Yeah. So that aligns with what I understand, that the dry docking is a bit more attractive in the near term due to these factors. What can you do to push the manufacturers to add Selektope in their more so dry docking products as well?
From I-Tech's perspective, there is obviously long processes, and we have worked a long time with many customers. So it's about proof, I would say. It's not relying on technical leaps. It's not relying on regulatory changes. It is to just feel comfort, get comfort on the products that they now are using in the new building area, and that can easily be crossed over to the dry docking side. So the answer is make sure there's some positive result from the trials that are ongoing, and then it will come. Of course, I-Tech is working closely to assure distribution and logistics and the commercial aspects that are needed to enter the little bit tougher dry docking market.
Yeah. And as you mentioned here before, you've also started looking at the leisure boat segment. I guess that's mainly in the US that the segment is more attractive. Could you talk a bit about the strategy when entering that segment?
Yeah, of course. First of all, I'll just confirm that you're right. The US is more attractive because of its regulatory setup. Federal approval is almost equal to state approval, although there is a procedure to follow, excluding maybe California, but for the rest. In Europe, it's completely different. Approval of the biocide, Selektope, is still a biocide, and it is approved for leisure boat use, even do it yourself. But there, the authorities are at each and every country having their own view, making it very unattractive for a paint maker to invest in just one country. And that is going to be a big issue for the anti-fouling industry in this part of the world. But again, going back to the US, that is where the opportunity is. The strategy is to find a partner. Has to be a paint maker because you register paint and ingredient technologies at the same time. And we know that there's a lot of boats, quite big ones in the US on the coastlines. That is, of course, inland lakes is not the interest for us, as there's no barnacle growth, of course, but coastlines are very important. And I must also say that there's not that, it's not that fragmented in terms of leisure boat paint makers in the US. It's there are a few dominant, and those are the ones we want to work with.
Okay, thank you. I think we got about a minute left. Let's take a question from the audience. Someone here is asking if you could compare the Selektope-based premium antifoulings on the market today with other premium antifoulings. Is there any major differences in price or in terms of properties that's interesting to highlight?
Well, in price, I think there's a depending on how. No, there's no big difference, but then it depends on which guarantees they sell into each product. There are probably products that are a little bit more expensive, but then they come with certain more extended guarantees on others, in one way. But as Selektope products come already with a quite hefty guarantee, they are definitely in the top range of the pricing schedule because they do perform good. And of course, the paint maker wants to get as much out of that as possible. It doesn't necessarily have to be like that, but that's how it is. Selektope's aim is, of course, or I-Tech's aim with Selektope is, of course, to find its way all the way down to at least the upper tier of the mid segment of the industry, and that will be a wonderful business if we do that. Already, the premium will be great. But to answer your question very simply, yes, it's an expensive part, but it's not extraordinary and more expensive than anything else. Sometimes not even more expensive at all. So it depends on paint maker case by case, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Philip, for that. I think our time is up for now. Big thank you for showing up here today. and it will
Thank
be
you.
exciting
Thank
to
you for
follow
having me.
going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.